What is up everybody, my name is Nick and I'm a super nice guy. Today I'm going to be making a shorter video that's really just an extension on the Designing Faster in Figma video. Specifically, it's about making less decisions in UI design. This is great because the more decisions a designer's making, the slower they get, the more fatigued they get, and it's just not really necessary. There are these certain hacks that we can do to speed up our workflow and make us more efficient as designers. I do think there's a lot of value in this conversation, hence why I'm making this second video to jump into this topic a little bit in more detail, and I have some examples that I think really will help illustrate this point in a clear way and hammer home this idea that I'm getting at. So enough about that, let's jump in. Alrighty then, so just starting off, I'm re-showing this same graphic that I got from a great book, Refactoring UI, which I'll link down below. It's also been shown in my Design Faster in Figma video, but it just illustrates quickly this scaling system that has some small increments and gets exponentially larger the higher up it goes, right? And then there's also some extra detail here where it works sort of like M's in front-end design. So 16 is the base number here, and we're multiplying it by a quarter, a half, 3/4, 1.5, so on and so forth. But it's really just a basic sense looked at as multiples of 8 or increments of 8. Cool, so now this applies to more than just spacing, and I don't know how clear I made that in the last video, and that's why I wanted to quickly illustrate some points here. Let's say we're designing a new button style. We're making a new design system and we want to know if this button should be with hard edges or have round edges or be a pill. And we can apply our multiples of 8 number system here into reducing the amount of decisions we're making. So previously when I was, just getting into the field, I was sort of in this route here where I was maybe making 10 decisions where I really only needed to sift through or filter out 4 main decisions. This top row here, what we're looking at is a border radius going up in increments by 1. So we have a 0 border radius here. Let's just see, we got 0 here. This next one we have 1. Now 1 is really subtle. It's almost negligible how subtle the differences between 1 and 0 are. 2 is a little bit more. 2 to 0 has more of a bigger jump, but 2 to 1 is a very subtle difference, and so on and so forth. So when I was iterating and messing around with visual directions, I was not following any specific system of numbers, and I would just look at things on the screen and think, oh, 7 looks great. Maybe I'm gonna keep it rounded and it's 7 or it's 6. But the thing is, that number is hard to keep track of. It's arbitrary. It doesn't relate back to anything. People might have a hard time understanding why you went with 6 or 7. The difference between 7 and 8 are very subtle, so you might as well go with 8 because people are going to attribute that to being in a multiple of 8, and it will make a lot of sense. So again, the amount of time you're spending on just the specific border radius of an object, every decision you're making, you're tweaking, and you're looking back at what this button or corner looks like, you're getting more and more fatigued, you're getting more tired, you're starting to slow down, and you're not going to be as effective or efficient to keep moving forward, and you'll have to take a break and things like that. So instead of going increments 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way up to whenever you decide it looks good, you can slim down all of those options into, say, 4 here, where we have 0 as a completely hard-edged button style. 4 is moderately rounded. It's a pretty standard amount of rounding. If you were going to go with a rounded button, I would say 4 would be the one. 8 is a little strange here, so I'd rule that out. It's a little too rounded. And then the last one was a complete pill shape, fully rounded. It doesn't really matter what the number is here, 24, whatever maxes it out and makes it a round pill. So essentially we just took about 9 different options and narrowed them down to 3. We either want a hard edged, a rounded edge, or a fully rounded pill-shaped button. Simple, done. This same thing could apply to, say, your card style. Maybe you are working with designing a new card style and you don't know if you want it to have the hard edge or the rounded edge. And again, all of these options can be simplified down to, say, 3 main types: hard edge, a little round, or really playful and very round. So the main point I'm trying to get at is these numbers don't have to do with just spacing increment. It's typically referred to as the 8-pixel grid system. However, it's really just staying in multiples of 8 for all of your decisions, and it's an effective way for teams to align on. And also the big thing for me is reducing the amount of decisions and the numbers that I have to carry in my head when I'm designing user interfaces. Cool, so I do have one more example of how this system really helps me speed things up and not have to carry these numbers in my head. So with spacing, specifically margin and padding, etc. Let's say we're designing a simple mobile screen with cards on it, and we don't know how much space we want in between the individual cards. Looking at this example here, I've added a 32 pixel padding inside the full mobile screen page. So there's space 32 from the edge. So maybe we want a very evenly looking spacing between them where the padding matches the space between the cards. And so for this, I've spaced the cards out 32 pixels vertically. So my auto layout here says 32. But let's say we're still iterating and exploring. What if we want more space, it to be a more airy design? So here we have 64. We've doubled the number and we're well within a multiple of 8. So we have two options that are very different, and it didn't take us any energy to explore that other option. However, what I have down here is, again, something I was doing really early on in my career where these numbers weren't something I was paying attention to. I was specifically paying attention to just what was on the screen visually and how that felt. So here we have, say, 22 spacing, 28 spacing. There's a little bit more space in between these. 30 pixels, 42, 50. So these numbers don't really relate to one another. But looking at them, you can see that some of them have more space in between than others at a quick glance, but the numbers really don't make sense. And so every time you're tweaking these and looking at them, you're exerting a bunch of energy that you might not realize. It happens sort of subconsciously, but you're working constantly and tweaking and looking back and assessing designs, where instead you can easily stay within this 8-pixel system and jump between these different values and make decisions much faster. And when we're making these jumps between smaller amounts and larger amounts, the brain is more easily able to identify these differences between the two and hence make a decision in a much more clearer and faster way. Cool, we did it. That was making less decisions in user interface design. As long as you're staying in line with this approach, I am very confident that you'll be able to design for longer amounts of time without having to take breaks and be much more efficient and make way more decisions in the areas that count. If this approach is new to you, I'd definitely love to hear if you notice any sort of shifts in your day-to-day activities and workflows, if there's been improvements in efficiencies and so on. Because that's the whole reason I'm doing this, to help everybody else get what's inside my head and get them to where I'm at faster than I could. With all that being said, please remember to like and subscribe to support my channel. I think that's everything for now, so until next time, super nice guy out.